Hello and welcome to Stories from the View, a podcast from the Pleasant View Senior Center in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. On this podcast, we invite East Longmeadow residents to tell us stories about their lives and events, and today's guest is Chris Rich, who is a life coach, and here is your host, Mary Jenowen Kaplan.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, Chris, and thanks so much for coming to join us today.
You're so welcome. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we appreciate your coming to the podcast. We know you are not a stranger to the Pleasant View Senior Center. We've enjoyed some of your presentations here. But so tell us, Chris, how did it all begin?
Well, I'll give you a little background. So I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and my husband and I, we moved here about 13 years ago. And one of the big questions that people always ask, I'm from Utah, and so they always want to know, am I a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And I am. And when my husband and I got married 26 years ago, I think, I can't even remember now, we both got married within our faith. And a few years into it, he decided that it was not his thing anymore. And my faith is a huge part of who I am. And it was really, really, really hard just to be, because it was not what I planned on. It was, I had certain expectations for how I thought things would look. And it was really hard. And we've got 3 awesome kids. I'm kind of jumping in the story, but we have a 14-year-old son, a 19-year-old son who is in college at Emerson College, and a 21-year-old daughter who is currently studying in China at NYU University, who came to play volleyball with me for chair volleyball.
She came to chair volleyball. It was wonderful.
So much fun. So after life it looked very different than I was expecting it, and I was mad. I was resentful. I had a lot of emotions that no one ever teaches us what to do with our emotions. And so I had a lot of things like eating and avoiding and just carrying a lot of resentment and anger. And I spent years really just struggling with this situation. And I discovered, I started working with a life coach. And it was amazing, the change, because for years I had been trying to change my husband. I'd been trying to get him back on the same page that I was on, and it wasn't working.
Darn.
Can you believe that? So I had spent so much time and energy trying to change my husband, and then as my kids grew up, they realized that they had no interest in being a part of the faith either. And, I had spent so much time just looking back, I was trying to manipulate them and trying to get them to do things my way. And it just kept disconnecting us. Imagine that. And so when I started working with a coach, I started to understand. She helped me to see that instead of trying to change the people outside of us, we wanted to focus on us. And magical things happened when I, started loving my husband for who he is, because he's amazing. He's just a wonderful person. And I quit trying to change him, and I started working on me, and everything changed. So that's how I got introduced to coaching and why I wanted to do it.
You wanted to share your good experience with others.
Yeah.
Very cool. So is there a life coach school? Did you have to go back to college?
I did. There
Really?
is. There's and it's actually the school that I was trained at is called the Life Coach School.
Huh.
And
Who knew?
this was during COVID that I started, I got my training, and it's just been wonderful because you learn all these different tools to help people in different situations. And just the things that we talk about in coaching can help in any area of your life.
So it's sort of like the cliche, it's not you, it's me. But it really is me, and I can change me.
Yeah, I've never thought about it. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So, do you have a team because you're a coach? What does a life coach do? What does it look like?
That's a great question. And, it's funny because every time I tell people I'm a life coach, they're like, oh, Chris, that's perfect for you. And then they go, what's a life coach? And then the next question is, are you a therapist or a counselor? So let's talk about that just really quick. So I would work with a therapist if I felt like I wasn't at my base level. Maybe I had experienced trauma or a significant life event where I felt like I wasn't functioning at my best. A therapist I would work with a therapist if I was struggling with mental illness, or, they could help just get me back to base level where I could function as my normal self.
So it's more clinical, kind of.
Yes. So a therapist is the definitely clinical aspect. So, and so they have a lot of training to help diagnose mental illness and to give you those tools to get you where you want to be. As a life coach, I'm going to back up. I want to say thank goodness for good therapists. I love my therapist. And I think we don't talk enough about mental health. There's such a taboo, and I'll be the first to admit I love my therapist and she's helped me so much. So as a life coach, I am helping people that are already at their base level. I do have several clients that I work with that see both a life coach and a therapist. So as a coach, I'm helping you if there's a particular area in your life that you would like to improve. A lot of what I do with my clients is we work on relationships, whether that be with a spouse, a partner, a child, a boss. I help people to set goals. A big thing I help people with is self-esteem and learning to love yourself. If you don't love yourself, it's really, really hard to love the other humans in your life as much as you try. Also, like I mentioned earlier, no one's ever taught us what to do with our emotions. And that's a big thing, is helping people to learn what to do that's going to be healthier than a lot of the things that we normally do when we're upset. So that's it's just helping you to become the next best version of yourself is how I describe it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So you meet with people in person, on Zoom. Don't I sound like 2024 on Zoom? How does you talk? Is that what happens?
So I actually meet with everyone on Zoom, which has been, that was great during the pandemic when things got started. So yeah, I meet with my clients on Zoom. One thing with a coach is you don't need to be, you can work with anyone in anywhere. So I've got clients all over the country that are, so it's not state specific like a therapist would
You don't have to be licensed in the Commonwealth of
So,
Nevada or whatever.
Yes. Interesting, the coaching industry is not a regulated industry. So that's one thing that is so important to find out. If you are working with a coach, make sure that they do have training. And because it's not an accredited, it's not a regulated industry. So you want to make sure that who you're working with has training and that they know what they're talking about. So important thing to
And
check
you
into.
also do presentations.
I do.
To groups.
I do. That's how I met you.
Yes, absolutely. So what would you talk about if you were talking with the group?
Well, I did a series of presentations here, and we talked about how to create more happiness, how to practical strategies when you're feeling anxious. We talked about time management. We talked about goal setting, self-esteem, the way we talk to ourselves. Just good practical things to help. How to have a difficult conversation. There's a whole bunch of different topics, just things that can help you in your relationship and learning to get through this human experience that is sometimes a little tricky and hard.
Well, I will say, I attended the sessions here at the Pleasant View Senior Center. And I, of course, was a tad skeptical because I am retired, as many of the folks here are. And when I was working, I was a great goal setter. I mean, we could accomplish some wonderful things. First of all, you had a pretty good turnout. These were topics that were of interest to a dozen people, more.
Yeah, I think we had about 20
in the area.
showed up, yeah.
But even your information on anxiety and happiness and goal setting and even time management, and I really pride myself in being organized, was really useful in day-to-day life. So it's
thank
not
you.
all about the work. It's about quality of life and
Yeah.
what we're doing with that. And you have handouts and you have documented information. This isn't, I went to college in the 70s and high school in the 60s. This isn't all just sort of touchy-feely, out there stuff. It was science and practical and interesting.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And you also share your information or share some information through a podcast.
I do. I have. So my podcast is called the Mixed Faith Relationship Podcast. So I work with my experience that I shared earlier, I do work with a lot of people that are in a similar situation to me. And so that's who I'm speaking to. And there are so many I've got a lot of friends that listen to it and they're like, I'm an atheist or I'm a totally different faith. And just great tips. And mostly it's just about, let's quit focusing on trying to change the other people and what can I do to work on me. And so the Mixed Faith Relationship Podcast, you can find it on Spotify and Apple. And super fun to share that.
Great. So what else do you have? You have a page of notes
do.
there. I don't want to, take you in a direction and miss some of the good stuff you've been thinking about.
Well, lots of good stuff. Well, one of the things that since we just started 2024, you had mentioned it might be fun to talk about goal setting.
Yeah, I haven't set a resolution. And when people ask, I say, well, I'm talking to a life coach on Friday, and then I'll think about what I'm going to do. So I look forward to this.
Hopefully we'll have you all figured out, Mary.
Send us the news, yeah.
So one of the things that I think is so important, we start a new year, and all of a sudden we want to change. We want to fix everything and become a different, like all of a sudden we think we're going to be a different person from December 31st at 12 o'clock, and then we're going to wake up on January 1st and be totally different. And I like to slow things down before we even get there. One of my favorite things is just looking back at the year that looking back at 2023, and just spend some good time looking at that. And that may be going through your calendar, going through your planner. If you have social media, going back and looking at photos, maybe it's just photos, and looking back at the things that happened in 2023, looking for the good. It's so easy to look back and be like, oh, 2023 or whatever was the worst year ever. And our brains are designed to look for problems. That's their job. Our brain's trying to keep us alive and keep us safe. So we're quick to notice the bad things. And a lot of times we don't see the good because and I love this quote. You'll hear me say this in every presentation. The eye sees what the brain looks for. So if I'm looking why 2023 was a bad year, I'm going to find it. There's going to be plenty of evidence. And every human that you talk to had hard things that happened in 2023, just like every other year. So I think it's important to look back at the good that happened and to notice all of it, but to recognize that there were some good things and there were some hard things. And I think that we want to train our brains to look for the good, because our brains on default don't do that. They are designed to look for problems. So I have a couple questions that I think that you can ask yourself as you're looking back at 2023. So what was my wisest decision? The biggest lesson I learned? The biggest risk I took? The biggest surprise of the year? The most important thing I did for others? The biggest thing I completed? What are you most proud of? I love these two questions I love. Who are the 3 people who influenced you the most? Who are the 3 people you influenced the most? I thought that was, I love these different questions to just look back and really think about what were the good things that you liked about it. And I don't know, I've got a bunch of other questions, but to look for what were maybe something you discovered about yourself. Maybe you went through something really hard. And how did you get through that trial? How did you get through that adversity? So look back at 2023 before we even look. And I know we're 5 days into January, but it's still okay to look back and to start with that. And cut me off at any time. You know I can talk.
No, you're doing great.
And then with that in mind, to ask yourself 3 other questions that I love. The first question is, what am I doing already that I love doing, that I want to keep doing? So I think that's an important thing because all of us have things that we, like physical things, like maybe we're good at exercising, or maybe we're social and we get out to the senior center, or maybe we meet with friends or whatever it is. So we want to identify what are the things that I'm already doing that I want to keep going with. The second thing, all of us have things that we probably don't want to keep doing. Like, I love my treats. That's one of my favorite things that I love. I don't drink, or I don't smoke, or I don't do any of the things. And I love my cookies and my cakes and those things. So that's something that I know that I want, that I could work on. So something that I want to get rid of. Or not get rid of, but just to do better with. And then the third thing is, what do I want to add? So maybe that's getting more exercise, or getting to sleep earlier, or just what's something I want to change. So I love these questions to set goals with. So
what you're doing that you want to do more of, what would you like to get rid of, and what might you like to add?
Yes.
Sounds like a plan.
And it's so simple because there's already, sometimes it's like, oh, I got to make this big, huge change. And if you want to, you can, but just, I love those 3 questions to get you started with that.
But the change part, I think that's what people are drawn to. Mm-hmm. And that's where we get stuck.
Yes.
Because, well, there was a very cute comic strip. I don't know if you read the comics. I need all the humor in my life I can get. And one of the characters was eating an ice cream cone, and the other character said, I thought you were going to cut back on your treats. And the character said, I didn't include sprinkles. So maybe it's incremental that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How do we do this?
That's so, well, one thing I want to start with, usually when we are changing something about ourselves, we kind of do it in a way like that there's something wrong with me. I'm a problem. I'm too fat. I'm too lazy. I'm too this, or I'm not enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not thin enough. We go at our goals from this kind of a scarcity mindset that we're not enough. And so when we go into it that way, it's a lot of times we set goals coming from more like a punitive aspect, that it's a punishment. I'm so fat that I've got to exercise and lose this weight. And it's important to recognize why we are setting our goals. If we're coming from a place of I'm not enough, it's not fun to be punished by other people, and we don't recognize it. It is not fun to punish ourselves. So I like to think of it as when all of us were born, we came into this world and we were whole, complete, amazing. We all have this beautiful value as human beings. And somehow we have this idea that changes when we get older and we make mistakes and we gain weight and things don't go the way we thought. But I want to remind everyone that your worth as a human being has never changed. So I think the most important thing is to set goals from a place of love, that I'm already an amazing human being with a lot of value and things to offer the world. And I just want to set a goal because I love myself instead of I'm not good enough. We want to come from abundance instead of scarcity. And that's a big thing that I work with my clients on, because a lot of people are just like, yeah, it's too late. It's never too late. Just looking at, and I know like when I'm working on a goal, if I'm doing it because I love myself and I want to be healthier, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I'm turning 50 tomorrow. It's my birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
How nice.
And
you look great.
Thank you. I feel fantastic. And that's one thing I've really learned to do is to love myself. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Part of the time I show up and I am confident and I say the right things and I behave the way that I want to. And part of the time I'm a hot mess. Part of the time I'm impatient, or I say the wrong thing, or I don't show up the way I want to. And I'm learning to love myself anyway. The days where I'm a rock star and the days where I'm a hot mess, that just loving myself. And so when I set my goals out of love and abundance, that's a lot more fun than when I'm beating myself up because I'm too fat or too lazy or all those things that I shared a minute ago. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. And so 50% of the time, we're pretty darn good.
Yep.
And so if we have a goal and can work towards it, not every single minute, we shouldn't give up.
Yeah.
Because 50% of the time, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice.
And another thing that I think is helpful that I don't know if you guys have seen this, but on social media, a lot of people are sharing how many books they read. And I've got friends that have read 70 books. And I remember seeing that last year and I just thought, oh my word, I've been doing other things and I do want to read. And so last year at the beginning of the year, I decided I do want to read more. And sometimes we set a goal like, okay, I'm going to read a book a week, or I'm going to read 20 pages a day, or we set these goals that they're kind of lofty.
Stretch goals.
Yes.
We call them. Yeah.
Yes. And for some people that totally works. For me, that does not. And I think that's the important thing. Take what works best for you. But I made a goal to read just one page a day, because that's something that you can do in 3 minutes, 5 minutes if you're distracted, like I sometimes get. And so I made a goal to read that 1 page a day. And so what happens when we make a little goal that is doable? So I go read that 1 page and I'm like, it's a good book. And I end up reading 2 or 3 or 20. And then so then I feel good about it. And it's like that next day, it's just a little goal. And then I start getting more motivated with those little things instead of some big thing. If I set a big goal, like read a book a week, for me, that's a big goal for me, unless it was Dr. Seuss or something like that. Then when we set goals that are too big, then we start beating ourselves up. Like, oh, I knew I couldn't do it. And yeah, this is never going to work. Then we give up on our goals. So what I like to say, I like to under-promise, so make a little tiny goal, and then I like to over-deliver. So and I've read, did I do it every single day? No, but I bet I got about 90%. And I read
That's an A in school.
Yes,
Good.
Exactly. Yeah. So under promise, over deliver. Instead of making, so often we just set these goals that are so big and then we beat ourselves up and it's like, yeah, I knew I could never lose weight. And we go back to that. We go beat ourselves up again. There is actually, I don't remember the date, but there's a day in January called, I think it's like the National Give Up Your Goal Day, that most people have already given up by, it's like 2 or 3 weeks into January. So
Not a great thing to celebrate.
no. So let's pick goals that we are doable and achievable and to do them out of love for ourselves instead of another example that I like to think of. Sometimes it's like we want to lose weight and we want to eat healthy. Well, so we just say like, I'm never eating sugar again. I'm just going to eat kale. And that lasts for about 10 minutes. And then it's just like, oh, I knew I couldn't do it. And then we beat ourselves up and we go back to eating all the junk. So maybe it's just like I may have my treats today and I'm going to eat a little more. I'm going to eat more vegetables. So doing it out of love instead of punishing yourself and beating yourself up for not being good enough or to this or to that.
I had a very wise friend who identified that she hated to empty the dishwasher. She really just loathed it. But then you run out of dishes, so you really have to empty it. And she timed it one day and realized it only took her 9 minutes. And then reality struck, and for 9 minutes, she can empty the darn dishwasher. So sometimes I think, as you say, our brain is looking at this as a horrible task.
Yeah.
And so our eyes see it as such. But if you can look at it a different way, then maybe you can get over that.
And one that makes me think of another thing so our brains are motivated by 3 things.
Okay.
They want, and remember, our brain's trying to keep us alive and safe.
Good.
Which we like. We like that. Our brains want to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and be really efficient. They want to keep doing the things to keep in the habits that we're already in because it's efficient. So when you're thinking about it, when you go to set a new goal, sometimes let's say that you want to start exercising more. So using that lens, I call that the motivational triad. Using that lens, is exercising pleasurable? Well, if you're not doing it, no, Mary's given me
It might hurt.
Yeah.
You might have to go out in the cold.
25 degrees today. Yeah. So is it pleasurable? Not really. Is it painful? Could be. It could. You might get blisters. You might get side aches. And it's hard work. You sweat. And is it efficient? Are you in the habit? No. So your brain is all of a sudden like, like it doesn't want to. So your brain thinks this is a bad idea. So it tells you feel like you're not motivated and you don't want to do it. So it's an important thing to understand about our brains. So they want to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and they want to be efficient. So if I'm trying to exercise, I want to find a way to make it fun, easy, and efficient. So I want to, like thinking of maybe exercising with a friend or listening to a podcast like this one. Or, maybe you reward yourself that you, after a week of walking, that you go get new sneakers or something. So we want to work with our brain instead of against it. Because when we are fighting our own brains, we're going to lose every time. So I love those, thinking of that. What can I do to make it more fun, more easier, and more efficient? Maybe that's like laying your clothes out to go to the gym the night before.
Mm-hmm. Go first thing in the morning before your brain wakes up and tells you not to.
Yes.
But then you can feel virtuous all day. I went to the gym. I walked.
And to recognize, I think so often we think just because our brains are saying, "Oh, this is," our brains they just want us to be safe and not
Comfy and
yeah. And you know what's safe and comfy? Sitting on my couch under a blanket in my jammies watching Netflix. That feels safe and
eating
comfy.
a cookie.
Eating a cookie or two. Or a
Yay.
piece of birthday cake.
Yeah.
So we want to work with our brains instead of fighting against it all the time.
Oh my, you're right. You are so right. That has been so helpful. So, Chris, do you have any parting thoughts or closing words or, I don't know, an inspirational song you'd like to share with us? What can you say?
I've never had that
I've never said that
opportunity.
here, but you could be the first.
Wow.
I wish I thought of a song. I think the big thing is trying to, it's so important that we love ourselves and to really work on that and to pay attention to how we're talking to ourselves, how we're treating to ourselves. And if you were, like with my kids, if I want to get them to do something, if I come at it from a positive viewpoint and instead of like, hey, you never empty the dishwasher, you never do this. We already know which is going to be easier. So think of that. How are you treating yourself with these goals that you're setting? Is it out of love and because you're an amazing human that can put more good into the world, or are you beating yourself up? Because it usually doesn't go well. And we keep doing it over and over again. So
We do. We get into non-productive routines or ruts.
yes.
And
Negativity. Yeah.
negativity. And if we can appreciate that the reason we're exercising or shunning the cookie is because we will feel better
Yeah.
and we want to take care of ourselves.
Out of love. Yeah. I love me and I want to feel good. So those are my thoughts.
Those are great thoughts. Thank you so much for coming with us today, Chris.
You're welcome.
It is always a pleasure to hear you. And hopefully folks will check out your podcast, see what else you have to say.
And they can I have a website.
Uh-huh.
So Chris Rich Coaching, Chris with a CH. And you can go to my website and I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Chris Rich Coaching. And you can also find me on my podcast, the Mixed Faith Relationship Podcast. And I coach on every topic. So don't let the mixed faith thing scare you away because it's all the same tools in whatever situation you're in.
Excellent. Thank you. Tips everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Chris. That wraps up another episode of Stories from the View. We'd like to thank our guest, Chris Rich. The Stories from the View podcast is available on the LCAT 01028 channel on YouTube and on Spotify. If you have a story you'd like to share on the program, contact Pleasant View Senior Center Director Erin Kobler by stopping by the Pleasant View Senior Center or by calling Erin 413-525-5436, extension 1401, or send Erin an email at erin.kobler@eastlongmeadowma.gov. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Stories from the View.